Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me, and I think this is going to be the regular day now. I'm settling into that. I was thinking, with respect to like recording schedules, like everything is just not topsy-turvy, but just it's a busy week. When you work like 4 a.m. to noon, like your schedule is really like kind of out of whack as far as like normality is concerned. And especially when you have like a really long commute back and forth from your home to your job, which hopefully won't be the case for too much longer. But yeah, it just saps a lot of your day. It just saps a lot of your time. And like planning to record a bunch of shows like in the middle of the week just doesn't work out. So maybe middle of the week. How about that? Middle of the week. I've already decided, I was talking before because I did a Flight Chat episode about a week or so ago. The first one in like weeks, right? And there's some new emails coming in, so there's going to be a new Flight Chat episode. But I think that's going to be every other week now as far as feedback is concerned. So just to get everybody on the same page here, some new schedules for 2025, if you will. But Wednesdays seem to be a good day, right? Like middle of the week, like just a sit rep, just a situation check. How's everybody doing? There's some DC stuff to talk about. Definitely within the last like couple of days. A new Superman TV spot, some posts on BLUESKY and social media from James Gunn. Yeah, we're going to talk some DC today. Because I definitely talked about Star Trek over the weekend because I reviewed Section 31, the movie that the majority of the Star Trek fan base just thinks, is the ultimate destruction of the franchise, and of course they couldn't be more wrong, but you know how fans are, fickle, and no one hates their own franchise more than fans in that regard. That you could say that for just about any fandom. But yeah, had a good amount of Star Trek talk last week. Before that, talked about the Flash, Andy Muschietti comments about why the Flash actually didn't do well, and all the people claiming, oh, was this because it was a bad movie? Yeah, that good and bad are subjective. That's not how that works, but if you listen to what Andy Muschietti actually said and what the studio likely told him was the case with respect to it not being a 4-quadrant movie, then maybe you might realize with a rational mind that he had a point with what he was saying. But that was a couple of weeks ago. We talked about that. Today we'll talk about some DCU stuff, but of course, before getting hot and heavy into the topics for this week, always want to remind everybody listening to the show, especially if you're brand new to this show. Thank you if you are a new listener. You can find this show and all the other shows that I do at theflightcast.com, or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, be it Apple Podcast, be it YouTube on the Flightcast YouTube page, or on Spotify or on Pandora. Search Flightcast and you will find this show and all the other shows that I do. This is the main show, the Flightcast, but I also do Flight Review where I do movie reviews. I am not a critic. I'm not a critic. I would never want to be a movie critic. Absolutely not. The bane of our existence as far as fans are concerned, especially since they love being rude and just love torching things for the sake of attention. No, I am not a movie critic, but I do offer my opinions as a fan on movies, of course, that are not right or wrong, completely subjective. It is all subjective. But I do that on Flight Review. There are times where I also do television reviews on Flight Box. I am still so behind on TV. Like, as far as Creature Commandos, I haven't watched. Apparently, there's a 5th season of Harley Quinn animated series that I didn't even realize was coming out, existed, right? I have a huge backlog on, like, everything to watch. It's insane. Talk to any of regular listeners of this show, they know that I have a list. A massive list, and at some point I'm going to get off my lazy ass and figure out exactly how I'm going to watch all this stuff. But I talk about TV on Flightbox, and then I mentioned earlier the feedback show, the listener feedback show that I do called Flight Chat. That's where I respond to listener emails about all the stuff that I talk about on any of the previous episodes. So there's that as well. And sometimes when there is like major alert, like a big news popping up, like when the first Superman trailer dropped for the DCU, I'll do a show called Flight Alert, which that's, all hands on deck. This is an emergency situation. Hey, let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. So that also happens as well. And again, all those shows and more at theflightcast.com or at the Flightcast YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Pandora. Look up Flightcast, you'll find it, no doubt about it. Thank you so much for listening. And also, thank you so much to the loyal subscribers to patreon.com/theflightcast that are still there. I did totally do another episode of Flight Speed yesterday where I talked about some of the, actually not yesterday, Monday was when I recorded it, where I talked about some of the stuff I'll talk about today. Not so much my fan angst, because I actually titled the episode Make Fandom Great Again. That's my bitter irony with respect to how fans just love to act, whenever they don't get their way, and, they just can't be bothered to say, they didn't do what I wanted them to do. They just have to find a rationalization to say, this is the worst thing they've ever done. I can't believe they're ruining my beloved franchise. Again, Marvel, DC, Star Trek, Star Wars, any of those, fans say that. But I ranted about that a little bit on my way home from work the other day on Flight Speed over at patreon.com/theflightcast. If you are a subscriber, you certainly listen to it, I'm sure. Thank you so much to those of you who are loyal Patreon subscribers. If you are interested in hearing any bonus content, bonus episodes of stuff that I post, definitely check out patreon.com/theflightcast and sign up to be a flight officer in order to gain access to that special content. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, first things first, let's talk about this new Superman TV spot that popped up, a few days ago? I think it was like late last week, early over the weekend, something like that. There wasn't a whole lot of new footage, just being honest. I mean, there were two new shots that I think a lot of people pointed out that were in the trailer. Two, like, decisively new shots, that are different than what we saw in the trailer and in some of the other stuff that we've seen so far. The first is the new shot of Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. And, I know that there's some people out there that don't necessarily dig the look that he has for Lex, but he looks the part, seriously. And Nicholas Holt's a good actor. Like, when he got cast as Lex Luthor, I was like, okay, that's good casting. That'll work. He's a good actor. He's still Beast in the Fox X-Men movies, but hey, let's see him play Superman's greatest arch nemesis, right? Is he Superman? Yes, Lex Luthor's Superman's greatest arch nemesis. Come on, that is his Joker, no doubt about it. Come on, everybody has a Joker, right? The Joker is to Batman as Lex Luthor is to Superman, and vice versa in that regard. He looks the part, seriously. Stepping off a helicopter, into, whatever Arctic realm he's at. I mean, maybe he's found the fortress. Like, are we going to see that Redux? We've seen that more than a few times, right? We've seen it, Gene Hackman and also Kevin Spacey's version, who I guess they were the same Lex, kind of, sort of, right? That's that whole wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey thing with Superman Returns, and don't really know. But, yeah, is this another case where Lex has found the fortress? I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe he's somewhere else fulfilling his LexCorp duties, because we totally know that LexCorp exists. That's the version of Lex that we're getting in the DCU, because we've seen the signage in the trailer. But the other new shot, the one that everybody is talking about with respect to this new Superman TV spot, is Superman flying at the very end of this teaser. And, I guess James Gunn had to field or fend off fans that thought that there was CGI in this shot. Look, no, it's clearly just, the camera, what David Cornswet is suspended in a green room, in one of those green screen harnesses, right? He's probably got some green suit guys moving him around. There's probably a fan or some type of air machine blowing wind at him to make the cape flat. If there's actually the cape. Now, the cape could be CGI. Now, he claims it isn't. Now, maybe some people are saying that the cape is CGI. He's saying, no, there's no CGI in the trailer. Okay, you know what? I'm willing to buy that that's a real cape. Maybe he found a way. Here's the thing about James Gunn. For anybody that has paid attention to James Gunn's work, he loves the practical. He does. I know it's easy to look at the Guardians trilogy and go, there's CGI all over the place. Well, they're in space, people. Come on. I mean, what is he supposed to do? Fly them into real space? He's not Tom Cruise. That's not how this works. So yes, there's going to be some levels of CGI with a movie like that. But he does like to shoot things practically. Go back and look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff for the Suicide Squad. That was the big indicator, right? When we started seeing that stuff at DC Fandom way back in the day, when we started seeing all the practical locations and the practical apparatuses that he was using to film the Suicide Squad, it was like, okay, no, he's doing some work. He's doing some actual set design, some actual location shooting. He's doing some physical, real-world work with respect to this. So I will take him at his word that there's no CGI in this. This isn't a bad shot. I don't really have, complaints. It is a little bit like, I guess formulaic is probably the bad way, but the Adam Warlock stuff from Guardians Volume 3, yes, I do see that. It's where the camera is placed, right? Does it look better than The Rock, his Black Adam flying in that movie? Yes, it does, because there's like this, it's like their head becomes a missile or like the head of a bullet or whatever, and that's why it's pointed that way. Yeah, there is a little bit of this in here, and people are commenting on, are his eyes crossed? They're going in different directions. Whatever. People are always going to nitpick stuff like this. I tend not to. So, the fact that it looks not quite like, Henry Cavill and Man of Steel, the way they did the flying there, it's not supposed to look exactly like that. I don't want this movie to look like Man of Steel or to be exactly a clone of that, right? I'll be fine if there's nods and whatnot to it. Obviously, there's nods in this shot, this flying shot, to both Man of Steel and Superman the movie, right? Not just in terms of how it's shot, not just in terms of the camera itself, but also in terms of the perspective, the colors, the fact that he's got the S shield on the cape again, like Christopher Reeve, this is a blend, right? And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for, and I've said this before, that I continue to look for with this Superman film, is the fact that it is supposed to be a celebration of Superman's legacy as a character over the years, and what will we see out of that legacy? What Easter eggs are we going to be? The Leonardo DiCaprio gif, from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where we're pointing at the screen going, oh, I know what that is. Oh, I remember this. Oh, I know what that is, right? That's pointing to this. That's pointing to that. That's what I'm looking for with this particular film. And, the critical eye for fans is always out. Most certainly it is. But for me, it's just, all right, the marketing is continuing. We continue to march toward July 11th, and there remains still just one thing about this marketing push for Superman that I don't care for, and that is the reuse of the Williams theme. I continue to say that, and I know there are people out there that still think I'm nuts for that, but this whole argument of the John Williams Superman theme from 1978 should be Superman's only theme. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely short-sighted, closed-minded bullshit, in my opinion. I think the Pearl Clutchers are clinging to that because, as I brought up many times, David Cornsweet is only our third cinematic Superman since 1978, right? So that's 47 years? Have I calculated that properly? Here, let me break out the calculator. I don't trust my mental math on that. I feel like I've calculated that before, but let me just check myself. Oh, I'm right. 47 years, right? In 47 years, we've only had two cinematic Supermen. Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill. That is it. David Cornsweet is number 3. Okay? And so because of that, that's why I think that reinforces why so many fans that grew up with Christopher Reeve's Superman have clung to that theme, and they've clung to the Williams music. I was listening earlier today on the way home because the stuff that I used to do over at Squadcast Media with my podcast brothers over there. We did a Patreon show over there, Squadcast Movies, and I remember some years ago, myself, Scott, and Tim, we did a review of Superman the movie. And I remember something, I was listening to it over again on the way home from work, because I do that sometimes because that's how long my commute is. And I was listening to what Tim said about the Williams theme because Scott brought up that part of the review about how much he loves the Williams score. We all love the Williams score. It's fantastic. It's iconic. It's amazing. But Tim made a statement. He said he associates that theme with Christopher Reeve's Superman, with that particular interpretation of the character. And he believes that it belongs there, and he doesn't want to hear it with other interpretations of Superman. And I completely agree. I think that other incarnations of Superman cinematically should have the freedom to be able to have their own theme. And yeah, it does concern me that David Cornsweet is not going to be afforded that freedom because James Gunn and DC Studios wishes to cling to the nostalgia for the audience. Now that's their choice, creatively speaking. It's not a right or wrong choice in that regard. It really isn't. It's just as subjective as anything else, opinion-based or art form here, right? But I disagree with the choice. If John Murphy is just going to give us a redux of the Williams theme, David Cornsweet's version of this character in the DCU, no less, deserves his own theme. he should be able to have his own theme. Okay, if Tim Daly was able to have his own theme in Superman the Animated Series, right? That it has its own musical phrasing that says Superman in the music as well, that Shirley Walker created. If he can have his own theme, if each incarnation of Batman can have his own theme, and we don't have to. I hear no Batman fans saying that the Neil Hefti na 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 Batman should be the only Batman theme ever, and that's the most iconic, arguably the most iconic Batman theme. When you ask people what the most iconic Batman theme is, do they hum Danny Elfman? I don't think so. Do they even know what Christian Bale's Batman theme is in the Dark Knight trilogy? Could they hum it if they were asked to do so? No, I don't think so. I don't even think people know the awesome work that Michael Giacchino did in the Batman. It's certainly not the Academy, because they wouldn't even nominate him for what I consider to be his magnum opus of scores to this point. But the point is, that's the only thing about this that I don't really dig, to be honest with you. It's in marketing, and I hope that the marketing, I really do, I'm holding out hope that this marketing is the only place that we really hear it this strongly. Hopefully when we get to July 11th and we watch that movie, Murphy has created something different. If he throws in nods to that, or to other Superman music, if you will, I'm good with that. But Corin Sweat should get his own theme. I'm going to stand by that, seriously. And if he does, fantastic. I think that's a great decision, because I really don't think the general audience cares one way or the other, to the point, so many fans want to talk about, oh my goodness, you've got to stick with it. No, they don't. The general audience does not care nearly as much as you do about it. But if they decide to stick with it and, hit those nostalgia buttons, and we'll see plenty of that'll shape people's positive reviews, right? Just the Williams theme and the fact that he has a dog. Oh, and the colors being brighter. That's all a lot of these critics need to really just give this movie a passing grade, if you will. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, the marketing is only going to ramp up from here. I don't know when we're going to see the first full story trailer with more dialogue, and we'll get more of a sense of exactly what the plot of this film is for those of us that are not reading a ton of spoilers. And personally, I'm part of being like disconnected from, the bad place over there at X and all the other social media platforms. Part of the good part of that is I'm not seeing any of the Scooper Madness nonsense. I saw some of it, right? Somebody on Blue Sky earlier today posted like a rumor, or like an update from All About, what is it? It's called All About Marvel Updates, right? And it said the Russo brothers have reportedly signed a new deal with Marvel Studios to lead multiple new projects, including the upcoming X-Men film. And then you look down at the source and it says via Daniel RPK. Nope. Hit that Price is Right loser horn. Dun 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 dun. Don't trust that Scooper Madness grifter bullshit. Absolutely not. That's the first of it I've seen. And I warned the person that posted this, because this individual who is I don't know if he's a follower. I know Liam Sharp follows him. Liam Sharp found me on Blue Sky too. I'm going a little bit off direction here, but still, that's awesome that I reconnected with Liam Sharp again, because he followed me up back over on the bad place when it was still called Twitter. But at any rate, yeah, Daniel RPK is not a source to trust, and I was letting everybody know that. And no, certainly not. So I'm glad that I haven't seen a whole lot of that on Blue Sky, and because of that, I'm not seeing any like rumors or leaks or like extra like set photos and stuff with respect to Superman, and anything regarding the plot. Like, I've seen some set photos and I've seen some stuff pop up, like I saw some stuff on Threads, obviously, when I still had my account there, and, maybe some more stuff more than likely will pop up on Blue Sky, but thankfully I haven't, like, sunk my teeth into a source with respect to what this plot is going to be. I'm waiting for the story trailer on that, so that'll be within the next, month or so, no doubt about it. They may have a Super Bowl spot. I mean, you would think so. You would think that Warner Brothers, you would think that DC Studios would absolutely have something new for the Super Bowl to run in prime time during, that time. I know Marvel will, right? Marvel will have something, right? They'll have something for the Captain America Brave New World, perhaps, because that'll be a couple of days later. Like, it'll be that later that week that it'll be premiering. We're coming up on that. But then maybe also something for Thunderbolts, and perhaps even something for Fantastic Four for later this year. We'll see something from the MCU, no doubt. So I would be stunned if we don't see anything from DC Studios during the Super Bowl. But either way, plenty of marketing ahead with respect to Superman and the DCU's future for sure. So stay tuned for that. The TV spot, no worries. I mean, not a big deal. Just really hope we get an original Superman theme that is not just John Williams Redux. But we'll see. All right. Speaking of the future of the DCU, we did get some news that Supergirl has in fact begun filming, and that's exciting, right? That is definitely a positive piece of information, no doubt about it, because I've said, a number of times, and I think, decent amount of people agree with me, that the future and the success of the DCU does rest on the shoulders of Superman, right? That movie must succeed right out the bat. The DCU must get off to a strong start for DC Studios in order for the rest of James Gunn and Peter Safran's grand and glorious plan, otherwise known as Gods and Monsters Part 1, to continue and to actually see fruition, right? There's got to be some, financial stability here, right? They've got to get off to a great start with respect to that. However, movies and projects that do get greenlit right off the bat, before Superman's release, I mean, we can be confident that those projects will likely see the light of day. I say likely because we do have to remember the big boss of Warner Brothers is somebody that does like to write off films for tax purposes, right? That's why we're not going to see Batgirl. That's why we're not going to see Coyote v. Acme or anything like that, right? So, likely Supergirl is going to happen regardless of Superman's success. But it is nice to see that it has started filming. They posted an image that James Gunn also shared of Millie Alcock, our new Supergirl, sitting in a chair, a director's chair with the red Supergirl shield on it. Of course, it is the House of L shield, the Kingdom Come inspired House of L shield that we are seeing featured in Superman. She's got the blonde hair, obviously. She's wearing a hoodie. Whatever the costume looks like, I imagine it's already been designed, and I imagine she may or may not be wearing it. And we're just being given a slight glimpse. I'm sure people have examined this scene. Somebody I saw was suggesting that she was at a bar, at a restaurant somewhere, and that this was indicative of a scene that is in the Supergirl comic that this is based off of, or that is taking, it's that this movie is taking inspiration from, if I'm not mistaken. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which of course is one of the numerous DC Comics works that I need to read, and certainly I want to read it before this movie comes out. I've also got to remember to read Superman for All Seasons in preparation for Superman as well. But yeah, I didn't poke any further. They posted the comic panels with respect to that. It will be interesting to see how close to the comics this is, with respect to that, and we've seen already with DCU marketing, with James Gunn's approach to the marketing, that he's definitely made direct connections to the comic lore. He's actually, said, hey, we recommend you read this, recommend you read that. He's given us de facto homework assignments, if you will, and has really made a marketing connection between his DCU projects and the comics, which is, as I've mentioned before, something we have not seen. Not even Marvel Studios has necessarily done that, and we saw the precursor to all this, the warm-up for all this in 2023, when James Gunn was giving us homework assignments, if you will, reading suggestions, I guess is a better way to put it, for the final leg of the DCU that was releasing, right? And, hey, read Flashpoint, read this, read that, in order to prepare for the Flash, whatever, that type of deal. So, that is cool. I always like to see the connections to the source material in that regard, and, the fact that the comic creators have all been out to the Superman set and all that. No, that's cool. The synergy between the cinematic universe and the source material, I think, is critical, and I think is important, and something that should be hyped and marketed for sure. So we've got 2 DCU projects definitively in production already, right? You had Creature Commandos, of course. Yes, that's there. And from what I read, it looks like they're into season 2 of that. That is, production has started with respect to that. At season 1, whatever happened with respect to the reception, I still need to watch it and give my thoughts on it. But I've heard good things. I've heard really good things from the people who have watched it. But, Creature Commandos, Superman, Supergirl, we definitely have production on those. And I think Lanterns is also, I think they're still in casting phase, but or maybe they're beginning production soon as well. But yeah, these are the tangible projects that we can talk about as actually like happening and actually being cast for and actually going forward. Notice how Brave and the Bold is not in that list. I still see people talking about Brave and the Bold this, Brave and the Bold that. And I realize that because it's the Batman project and because it could potentially involve the Bat family, since we know Damian Wayne's Robin will be the Robin there, right? I realize that that is one that many are anticipating, but we have nothing to say about it officially until it actually moves forward. And it's well after all these other projects. It seriously is. And we're just going to have to be patient. And guess what? As a Batman fan, I feel like we can be patient. Once again, I will turn to my shelf of Batman content in glorious physical Blu-ray form, most of it in steelbook form. I got plenty of Batman content. I've had a glut of Batman content. Batman fans have been living high off the hog, if you will, to use an old phrase. We have nothing to complain about. We don't. We have nothing to be impatient about whatsoever. You can wait for the Batman Part 2 to actually be finished, however long it takes. You can wait for the Batman Brave and the Bold to actually be greenlit and go into production after all of these other DCU projects that start off first. And yes, that does include Peacemaker Season 2 as well. So find whatever sliver of patience you may or may not have, Batman fans. We're going to be okay. Again, it's all going to rest on July 11th. You better show up on July 11th and en masse, right? And you better hope the general audience shows up on July 11th, or else Batman Brave and the Bold will never happen. Just throwing that out there as far as the future of the DCU is concerned. But at least we know Supergirl in some form is happening, and hopefully we will get to see it one way or the other. So here's rooting for the success of that project as well. All right. Now I want to go back a bit, like about a week and a half, and talk about something James Gunn responded to with respect to canon in the DCU, because this is just not going to go away, and fans are going to continue to harp on this. And canon is just going to be one of those things that, one, fans continue to misspell, using the homonym, if you will, like the one with two N's instead of the one with one N. And it's also going to be something that they're just going to continue to worry about with respect to being confused. And they needn't be, because they're fans, but they keep acting like the general audience is either stupid or cares enough about canon. So this was a question asked by Mitch XXVI. What is that? Is that 26? Yeah, I think that's 26 if I know my Roman numerals correct. Mitch 26. He tagged James Gunn in a post that said, "Finally got to finish watching Creature Commandos, and it was hilariously brilliant. But I do have one question after watching." He asked, "Is the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker fully DCU canon, because most plot points in them were either referenced or followed up on in Creature Commandos?" And Gunn actually gave two answers to this. First, he quoted it on BLUESKY, and he said, "Short answer, only Creature Commandos forward is pure canon. For instance, Rick Flag Jr. was killed because we heard Rick Flag Sr. talking about it in Creature Commandos, not because we saw it in the Suicide Squad." Okay, so that's the short answer. But he also posted a long answer. He quoted the same thing, and he said, "Only CC forward is pure canon. Peacemaker is almost entirely consistent with that canon, other than the Justice League. The Suicide Squad has a lot of consistencies, but I think of it as an imperfect memory." Okay, so there was a lot of hemming and hawing, and there was a lot of, stressing over what exactly is he talking about. I think that his phrase, an imperfect memory, is a great way to go about it, right? Because, we're in this situation where Peacemaker is continuing on into the DCU, but the first season was absolutely part of the DCEU, right? So it's a bridge show, kind of, or maybe it's a show that it's not necessarily a bridge, but like, obviously, there's going to be certain details from Gunn's work that do cross over in that regard. But the idea of thinking of it as an imperfect memory, so basically, he's saying the first season, as far as DCU canon is concerned, is Mandela effect. We're under the impression, those of us that watched the Suicide Squad, those of us that watched Peacemaker Season 1, we're under the impression that Peacemaker killed Rick Flag Jr., right? But what he's saying is that now that is no longer, thanks to the multiverse, thanks to the powers of the DCU's existence into, the forward thinking, the forethought, the forefront, if you will, right? Now that memory is kind of iffy, right? Because in the DCEU, Peacemaker totally did kill Rick Flag Jr. But now Rick Flag Jr. is just killed, right? We don't know how, and maybe we'll find out how later, right? But it wasn't Peacemaker, necessarily, right, in that regard, right? Because this is what he says. He said he was killed because we heard Rick Flag Sr. talking about it, but not because we saw it in the Suicide Squad. So now in the DCU, we didn't see Peacemaker kill him, right? We saw him killing in the DCEU, but not in the DCU. And fans love to act like what I just said is extremely confusing. No, it isn't. It's not confusing. And it's funny to me that fans a lot of times want to act like this canon stuff is confusing when the reason they're asking the question is because they know they're not confused. They just want to act like everybody else is going to be confused, right? And they raise a concern like, I don't think this is a good idea. And what it really boils down to is there's something that they want a definitive answer, but not just a definitive answer. They want their definitive answer, right? What they want is for James Gunn to tell them that the DCEU is dead. Right? They want them to say, oh, well, it completely wiped out, it's this or that or whatever, right? Because they want something necessarily to complain about, and they want a definitive answer that goes their way. Otherwise, they're going to complain about it anyway in that regard, right? Now, what I just said is probably more confusing than anything with respect to canon, but it's how a lot of these fans work with respect to why they ask this question, right? So, do I believe that Mitch necessarily asked the question, with respect to, I think he asked it for clarity. I don't think he asked it for misery, but other people that complain, other people that commented on it and just well, it's this or well, it's this. No, well, why would they do that? Why would they do this? No, it's all an artistic decision. And I know there are plenty of fans out there that don't even like that this is happening. The anti-gun crowd that just believes that the reason Peacemaker is crossing over is pure nepotism on James Gunn's part, even though he, as a creative, has full right to continue his work into this new universe that he's building. What is the problem with that? There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. No, fans have an issue with it because he's not bringing along what they want, right? They want him to bring along, Henry Cavill or Ben Affleck or Gal Gadot, whatever. They want him to do that. And no, he's decided to go in a different direction, but he's keeping his own work halfway canon, right? I really do like the phrase imperfect memory. I think it is a great way to describe the Peacemaker situation, right? Because now we can treat season 1 as mostly reliable, but some details are going to be different. And we as fans will observe and we will point out exactly what those differences are. We're going to watch all of this, right? Whether we love it or hate it. People are going to watch it for entertainment or they're going to watch it to hate on it. Both things will occur. Both things are true. We're going to watch all this stuff and we're going to point out exactly what the differences are between, what the memory was in the DCEU and what the memory is going to be in the DCU going forward, right? We'll spot those differences. Articles will be written, think pieces and opinions, Screen Rant will come out with some bullshit, so will Collider, whatever. That's going to happen, right? That's going to occur. Things are going to be said and broken down, and we're going to be the ones to do it. And the fun part about this is that while we're doing this and while we're hemming and hawing and while we're arguing with each other on social media about it, the general audience, anybody who watches these movies, anybody who watches the shows, they're just going to go, okay, all right. They don't care nearly as much as we do. They're not going to get confused because they don't care. The odds are, I always... Back in the day, not that long ago, I was thinking, well, I'll be ready to answer questions from my sisters or my mom or anybody else. And the reality is they're not asking the questions. They don't give a shit. They don't care about the questions, right? If they have a question, they may ask me, but it's not urgent. It's not like, I'll get a call at 1 a.m. Ray, you got to tell me what's going on with this canon. Who is Superman? Which actor is it? What's going on? No, I'm not going to get that call. That's not going to happen. Just in passing at a family gathering. Oh, Ray, I did see that Peacemaker. Hey, just out of curiosity, what's going on with Superman? What's going on with it? That's how it's going to go. More often than not. The general audience is not so beholden to canon and continuity like we are as fans. And that's difficult for fans to believe and accept, but it's the truth. And there's loads of evidence, and there's loads of behavior from fans who still believe that Avengers and Justice League are one and the same, and they treat superheroes as one massive genre without looking at labels that proves this. Seriously. So it is what it is. I like what he said. I really do like the imperfect memory explanation. I really do like that. James Gunn, so far, if I were to rate his tenure from a PR standpoint, and especially from a social media standpoint, I think he's doing a bang up job. I really do. I like his responses. I like that he's taken the time to answer legitimate fan questions and try his best to ignore the shitty ones and the toxic ones. And fortunately, I haven't seen a whole lot of the toxicity and whatnot on Blue Sky as of yet. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I haven't seen a whole lot of it on Blue Sky as of yet with respect to that. And he's definitely got an active Blue Sky following over here. He's got over 243,000 followers on Blue Sky, which that proportionally makes sense. Blue Sky just hit 30 million users, and that platform is continuing to grow while X continues to, dwindle into, the cesspool that it is in that regard. Either way, but yeah, no, I think he's done a phenomenal job so far with respect to marketing. And the people that want to be overly critical and say this and say that, no, he has done some important things as the co-head of DC Studios that I think are necessary. I think he's brought the branding out, right? DC Studios has a definitive logo. He explained the logo. We've got that branding out there. So, that's something that DC Films never did. And I begged them to do it. And everyone was asleep at the wheel with respect to that aspect of it. It's like Marvel Studios has been throwing their logo in our face for nearly the last 20 years. DC Studios needs to do the exact same thing. And lo and behold, we've got it, right? It's on the Penguin, okay? It's on the Batman Epic Crime Saga stuff. It's on the Superman trailer. It's on Creature Commandos. We're going to see it. Absolutely. Can't wait to see the first, animation or whatnot, or however they decide to do that, in front of the Superman movie later in July. But yeah, he's got that going. The social media presence is going, all the videos and stuff that he's posted, talking about, hey, there's this coming up, there's that coming up, we've cast so-and-so, the debunking, if you will, of fake news and the proliferation of actual news when, hey, he's the one that will tell you Supergirl is filming. Never mind what Scooper Madness says, right? He's the one that says, hey, there's no CGI on David Corenswet's face in this TV spot. He'll be the one to answer that for you. I like it. I really do like it. And he's refined his social media presence because he's come a long way from when he used to argue with any and everybody way back in the day when he was solely a part of Marvel. And he certainly even has evolved in the last couple of years, becoming the co-head of DC Studios. And I am looking forward with cautious optimism, of course, to what he's bringing to the table with respect to the future of the DCU and the future of young DC Studios. DC Studios is still a young entity, guys. It's only been, a year or so, right? And we're still waiting for the big debut. Superman is the big debut for DC Studios. So yeah, can't wait for that. Like I said, am optimistic. I am not rooting against it. I don't root against DC. I want DC to succeed. Whoever is in charge of it, right? I want DC to succeed because at the end of the day, that's where my favorite comic book characters lie. And that is the hopeful optimism, if you will, the cautious optimism that I will exude with respect to that. And I say that as somebody, for people that have listened to the show, I'm a longtime fan of the DCEU. I own the entirety of the DCEU. You know my thoughts on the Zack Snyder trilogy and how much I hold it in extremely high regard. I think Zack Snyder's Justice League is, to date, the best shared cinematic universe comic book movie that we've seen to this point. I really do. I really do feel that way. And I love Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition, and I love Man of Steel, most certainly. But just because I love all of that doesn't mean I can't be optimistic for James Gunn's vision of the DCU. And it doesn't mean that I can't call the Suicide Squad his magnum opus. I know fellow DCEU fans think I'm nuts for saying that, considering what he did with Guardians. And look, I love the first and the third Guardians films. I'm not as keen on the second one in that regard, but I think there's a lot of stuff creatively he did in the Suicide Squad that he did not do in any of those three films, truthfully, that I really like as a part of his creative repertoire and some choices that he made visually and storytelling-wise in the Suicide Squad that I think really speaks to what he actually does as a storyteller. And I'm looking for Superman to hopefully be his next magnum opus. We will see. I'm rooting for him. I am. I'm rooting for him because it is possible for fans of Zack Snyder to also root for James Gunn. There are more of us than you know. Just saying. for people that seem to believe there's this war between the fandoms. Not everybody's at war. A lot of us are sick of the idea of war, and just we want to like our shit and, not be bogged down by all the other toxic drama on social media. The fandom bullshit. No, none of that. So, yep, there you have it. A little bit of a look into the world of the DCU with some recent news over the past week or so. And you know what? I think that'll do it for this particular episode of the Flightcast. Not a long one. They don't all have to be, gargantuanly long. That is something I'm working on as far as a New Year's resolution, if you will, is more concise episodes. I don't like to drivel on, and drone and repeat myself 1,000 times, even though I'm certain I've repeated myself a dozen times just in this particular episode. But thank you for listening to my repeating and droning on, if you will. Thank you so much for listening to this show and supporting this show. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any thoughts with respect to the future of the DCU or the Superman TV spot or Supergirl or the whole canon debate or anything else that you want to talk about with respect to movies, TV, and other assorted media, you can find me on BLUESKY at Flightcast. That is the social media platform that I use and hail from. There is also currently the Flightcast Facebook page that you can also post to and find content there as well. And of course, I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of Flight Chat, which will be this upcoming weekend. That will be our next feedback session. And as I mentioned earlier, Captain America Brave New World due out on February 14th. Look for an episode of Flight Review that weekend as well for that. And at some point, I will get caught up on Creature Commandos, I'll get caught up on Harley Quinn, and in addition to hopefully talking about it with Scott over on DCTV Squadcast and Squadcast Media, I can also talk about it on Flightbox here as well in the not too distant future. But until then, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.